We're here at the Wick Yards, and this is the Raw Alternative. Releasing 2 albums in 2021 alone, they have created a fusion of sound and aesthetic that transcends any kind of label or genre. The Raw Alternative welcomes Lilith Mors. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
So, talk about the birth of the musical entity that is Lilith Mors.
Oh, wow. So, it actually all started as sort of like a teenage angst project when I was 14, because I had this desire to do a sort of like teenage angsty project, but to like sort of wrap it in metaphors and make it sound like it's something beyond what it really was. I wanted to make it sound very like mystical and otherworldly, and I sort of wanted to like create the darkness in me as like a metaphor, as like a metaphorical entity, and that's kind of what Lilith Mors is. And it was also a project about sort of like breaking away from it and really like discovering myself and who I am as an artist. And I wanted to start doing things on my own instead of relying on other people. And Lilith Mors was very liberating for me, I feel like. And yeah, I made my stage name on June 6th, 2020, and that's why I write in my artist bio that she was spawned by a witch on June 6th, 2020. So yeah, that's who Lilith Mors is.
That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Wasn't sure, where the line was drawn between mythology and, but that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
So it's interesting that you mention, teen angst because, and I think that's the springboard for everyone, whether you're, a little 3-piece punk rock band hammering away in the garage or, you make this sort of, indie acoustic, melodramatic music. So why did you choose the direction of Lilith Mors?
Well, I was very inspired by Grimes at the time, and if you don't know who Grimes is, she's just this insanely beautifully independent artist who produces, makes the cover art, and writes and performs all of her own music. And I was really inspired by that because I was just starting to produce my own music. And, as a woman, it's very inspiring to me to not have to rely on this industry, which can be very sexist, and also there's a lot of, like, risk for women in the industry, like, being subject to, like, predators. And, I wanted to be able to, like, free myself from that and sort of just be completely independent. And, yeah, that's definitely one of the big motivators of Lilith Mors and being completely independent like that.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
You mentioned Grimes, and another artist that kind of comes to mind for me is like Poppy.
Oh, yeah.
These sort of self-made artists who have really used the broad stretch of the internet, but have used it in a creative way, and I've kind of seen sort of with what you do with the visuals, and it's very mysterious. There's this whole like mystique, and it's intriguing.
Thank you.
Does that sort of play into the greater scheme of things?
Yeah, it started off as sort of this like scheme, like I said, like creating this metaphorical version of this darkness in me. Like, I think I use Lilith as, like another metaphor, like the mythical Lilith in Judaism and Christianity. I sort of used her as a tool to create this misunderstood figure, and that sort of ties in with the teenage angst project and the independence project, because at Lilith Mors' core, it is very feminist. It's very geared towards breaking away from these stigmas and preconceived notions about me and about so many other women and about Lilith as a whole. But yeah.
Feminine energy, I mean, you tap onto that. I mean, why do you think it's taken our culture so long to really finally even so much as talk about this? I mean, you've had artists that have dared to go there in the past. I mean, from, you could say, Madonna to Blondie to Courtney Love, but really in the last few years you've seen an explosion of empowered women that are really going against the grain. Why do you think it's taken so long?
I really don't know. I think for many years, men in the music industry have really been putting women down and silencing them. And I think it's taken us a long time to, like, truly liberate ourselves from that. And people like Grimes who say, like, fuck it, I'm not letting you, like, sorry, am I allowed to swear?
No, yeah, you're fine.
Yeah. People like Grimes who say, fuck it, like, I'm going to do it myself. I'm not going to rely on men. And you know, she talks about how people try to do her job for her. Like, a lot of men in the industry will be like, oh, like, I'll do this for you. But she's like, no, I'm doing it on my own. And because that's who she is. She's an independent person. And I feel like that's who I am too. Like, I don't want to have to rely on somebody in the industry who's going to take advantage of me and take the rights to my music and profit off me and capitalize off me, you know? And I think men have been doing that to women in the industry for such a long time.
You released 2 records in 2021 alone.
Yes.
Your most recent, World Leader, being a concept record. So talk a little bit, I find this a really interesting,
Thank you,
deep concept. So talk a little bit about that, if you wouldn't mind.
So I wanted to make a concept album for a long time, and I wanted to detach from my own emotions a little bit, because I felt like as an artist, all of my music was sort of about, like, oh, woe is me, I'm so sad. And I was like, you know, I kind of want to break away from that. And I decided to write a story. And I was in online school, and my days were very boring. And I just remember just being randomly inspired. And I got this, like, storyline in my head where it's, like, an alien race, and they're a very stoic, nihilistic culture, and they send one alien to, like, come down and make contact with humans and, like, annihilate the human race. And they have to, the chosen one, I guess, like, has to go through a series of tests to see if they are human enough to, like, relate to the humans and sinful enough to, like, be able to kill an entire species. And so it's the 7 deadly sins, and there's 7 tests to see if you have the qualities of humans. So, you know, pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, sloth. And that's why I say that in the first. So the first track on the record is Royal God, Your Eyes on Me, and it's about how Duxa, the main character, is going through this series of tests to see if she's really, like, the chosen one who can do this task. And then they send her off, and that's when it begins.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's really interesting.
Thanks.
What is it about the appeal of a concept album? Is that something you've ever, maybe other records from other artists, or, like you said, was this just an idea that came about one day that really inspired you?
Definitely a little bit of both. Like, I always kind of had a desire to do a concept album because, again, Grimes, her first album, Giddy Primes, is a concept album about Dune. And I actually read that book just because I love that album so much. And I was like, man, I really want to detach from my emotions and do something that's storytelling, because I find it really interesting in music when things tell stories. And I wanted to tell this story of this character I made in my head, and I was like so obsessed with Duxa. Like I was drawing her all the time, and I was like, wow, like I really like I want to tell her story. And yeah, so that's how it came about.
Talk a little bit about your visual aesthetic, especially in a lot of the videos you've released over YouTube. Really very esoteric, maybe ethereal, maybe is a better term, but very like thought-provoking, but also mysterious. How much does that play in? How much does the visual aspect play into the overall project?
I think it was a really big thing for me because I started Lilith Mors when I was 14, and I was just discovering the goth scene and goth music as a whole, and I was really starting to play with the way I view myself and the way others perceive me, and you know, I really wanted to experiment with my style and the music I listen to and the art I consume, and I don't know, it's always been, my appearance has always been important to me musically, because I just have this very distinct memory. You know, I'm a natural blonde, and my favorite color is still pink. And I just remember being this, like, little blonde girl who would walk on stage with her electric guitar slung over her shoulder, and I just remember this guy, he really pissed me off, because he said, "Oh, I bet you're playing an acoustic guitar, aren't you?" And I said, "No, I'm playing an electric guitar." And he was like, "Oh, really?" And then after my show, after I played creepy, dark rock music, he was like, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that." And I was like, "Yeah, I bet you weren't." But I do like to surprise people, you know, and I feel like it's one of the thrills of my music career, like, just surprising people, because, I mean, yeah, my appearance musically is very important to me, and I just like to play around with it, and yeah.
Cool. What are your plans heading into 2022?
Well, I only have one more track I'm recording on my album. My upcoming album is called Wilted Lilies.
This is a new one released this year.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think I'm either releasing it in April or May. And I'm really proud of it. Although it came from a lot of, like, musical frustration, and I was very uninspired for a really long time, and it's been hard, but this might be the hardest album that I've ever had to make, just because I feel like I sort of ran dry for a really long time, and I had to, like, force it out a little bit, but once I opened the floodgates, it was like, I got it. And it's really, I think I had to, like, ricochet from my last album, because my last album was completely detached from me as a person and my emotions, and I feel like I needed that release again. So this album is, like, very, very deep into my, like, childhood wounds and my emotions as a whole. Like, it's very vulnerable, and through that vulnerability I feel like I've allowed myself to heal a lot.
That's nice. That's good to hear. We're very excited to hear it. Tell us where we can find you online.
Well, I have a website, www.lilithmors.com, and that has links to everything: my SoundCloud, my Spotify, my Apple Music, my Amazon Music, Instagram, Facebook. I have pretty much everything.
Great. Well, it was really great talking to you today.
Thank you.
Very much stoked for this new record. Plug it one more time, if you would.
The album, or just me?
Yourself and the album.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty much Lilith Mors on everything: Facebook, Instagram, my website. And my upcoming album is called Wilted Lilies, and it'll be out in April or May of 2022.
Great. Thank you so much for being here today.